So it's important to know what was going on in each era and some of the contextual factors and relevant concepts that could come in. But it's also important that you can look at text from each era and unpick, well, what might the meaning be in that actual text, because some things you'll see and some things you won't, and you don't want to just recite loads of things you know about each era if actually there's no evidence of them in the text, or they're not really relevant to this text. So I've looked at this extract from The Rover, which is a play, and like I say, in some ways it's an odd choice because they'll tend to go for non-fiction. But I think there's just a lot of different things in this text that we can unpick and look at, really, that make it quite useful as an indicative example of 1600s text. I've colour-coded the underlinings into three categories: grammatical, lexical, and orthographic. Although there's not much in terms of orthography, that means the spelling, basically. There's not too much in this one, but I'd say actually that the orthography paragraph should probably be your shortest one anyway, because you might comment on the spellings being different, but actually there's you're sort of limited in what else you could say. So I tend to say to my students, you want a good paragraph on lexis, probably the biggest paragraph on grammar, and then an extra paragraph on orthography, perhaps with a little bit of discourse. So how does the overall discourse structure of the text show information about the time as well? So in terms of orthography, the big one that I've picked out there is this spelling of gypsies, gypsy and gypsies, which we get in two different ways. We get the I in one and the Y in the other. It just shows that interchangeability between the Y and the I spelling. So it shows, therefore, that the language hasn't been standardised yet, because this is a year really before prescriptivism kicks in. Okay, so I think that would be one that I would talk about. In terms of lexis, I've underlined these things in green. So I've just picked up words that are either archaic or were interesting to look at for particular reasons. So I have been mewed up this afternoon. It's an archaic word. It's not one that we say anymore, is it? You wouldn't describe somebody as mewed up. So it's a particularly useful word. If you want to talk about grammar, actually, you could also talk about it being a participle, because it's a verb, but it's used as an adjective. I have been mewed up. Yes, it describes her as being mewed up. So you could even go a little bit further on that. Okay, but hey ho, I'm sad as a lover's lute. Well, the lute, which is seen as it's like a little guitar, like an instrument of love. If you've seen old romantic films that are set in sort of the medieval times, you might have seen a guy playing a lute. Just a great thing to talk about the impact of the Renaissance there, couldn't you? The growth in sort of music that came in the Middle Ages, and a lute being a great example of that. I had never seen my Mad Monsieur, so again the French term for Mister. Now this text is set, I believe, in Italy, so that's some of the reason for some of these loan words and foreign words. But you've also, I think, got that idea of again, French equals sophistication. I'll have to think how thou art fitted. So we get art, which is an archaic form of are, but also thou. So this is that informal version of you. They're friends, so she calls her thou, not you. This is like the French vous and tu, where we have a formal and an informal word. It's the same thing here. Okay, that's archaic now. We just say you for either. But again, that's a really nice example to talk about contextually. It shows that they're friends, but it's also an archaic word that we don't say anymore. We get phrases like what the deuce. So again, deuce from French. So we see it showing the French influence on lexis, but it's also an archaic expression, what the deuce. You may have come across it, but it's kind of gone out of fashion now. So archaic sort of idioms and expressions there. Nay, the Lord knows. Okay, so this invocation of God and religion, this idea that I think it just shows a more widespread religious practice at this time. We might still say God knows as a bit of an aside, but the Lord knows, that slightly more respectful version of it, which is a more common expression in the past. Valeria, we shall see her bestride his baggage horse. So again, the archaic word bestride. So just, we might still say astride maybe, but bestride. But again, bestride the baggage horse. So again, it very much marks his text as pre-industrial, doesn't it? Because why would you have a baggage horse? Well, because you've not got a car or or a train or a carriage or whatever. So it just it dates the text in that sense, that was a mark of kind of class and superiority, as well as the monsieur. And then I will not die of the pip. And I've actually tried to work out what the pip is. I think it's love sickness. But I can't say anything definitive. But I will not die of the pip implies it's some kind of a disease. But it's this common sort of informal way of describing it. So it's good in terms of, again, being an archaic word, but also this view that love sickness could be something that killed you. So it's also that view of romance which you get with the Luton, with the Mashur and sitting aside his horse, which gives this idea of courtly love and love being something that actually can have a real impact on the body. Grammatically, some of these are relatively straightforward. So I should have heard on it. So we get the contraction of on and it, but we also get on used. We say of now, so we get the prepositions being different to what we'd say today. Yeah, on rather than of. We also get this, which I would not for the world should have happened. So we get two modal verbs kind of side by side. I would not for the world should have happened. Nowadays we say, I wish that hadn't happened, or I hope that doesn't happen. Okay, but I would not, it should happen. So we get that repeated modal to again add emphasis to this idea of how strongly she sort of feels. And we get me thinks, a compound of me and thinks, but it nowadays would be grammatically incorrect because she's speaking in the first person, so it should be I think Helena. So we get the object pronoun used when it's the subject of the sentence. Yeah, so you'd say you think that of me when you're the object, but you wouldn't say me thinks. You say I think. So we get an archaic word, but also the subject object pronouns sort of mixed up there. How we see Helena, so again that contraction there, and a lot is would I had never seen my man Monsieur. So again we would say something like I wish I had never seen him. So again would is used as with this one almost to mean wish. I wish I hadn't seen him. But we also get the verb used before the subject. Would I had never seen, not I wish I had never seen. So the verb comes before the subject. So the syntax there is reversed and is different to what we'd say today. And in the exam, when you're looking at two texts, you'd compare that to a later text that maybe didn't do that so much, or maybe did it in a different way. The small acquaintance of on my conscience, so again you could talk about the contraction there, will never out of my head. Notice we get the modal verb, it will, but we don't get the main verb, it will never leave my head. I think would be the modern equivalent, it will never leave my head. It leaves out that verb, it's will never out of my head. So out almost becomes the verb in this case, it will never come out of my head. So again the preposition is different. The preposition out almost acts as a verb because the verb is gone. It's just a lot of it is just saying what you see. It's looking at what's different and then unpicking, well, why is it? What the Jew should this be now that I feel? So again, the reversal of the subject and object. So what we might say nowadays is I am not sure what I feel. So you start with the I as the subject, but what the Jew should this be that I feel? Again, that the subject is coming much later in the sentence, and it ends on the subject and the verb. So the order is the other way around. If you notice anything that departs from that SVOCA model, the subject, verb, object, complement, adverbial, they're often good ones to talk about for syntax. Why is it the other way around? Now the Lord knows, but if I should be hanged, I cannot choose but be angry and afraid. So again, what we get there is the conditional clause coming early, which we do sometimes get in English anyway. But again, we've got that reversal of the order. Okay, if I should be hanged, I cannot choose but be angry and afraid. When I think that my fellow should be in love with anybody but me. What we also get here is multiple examples of subordination. So we get the conditional, if I should be hanged, cannot be choose, to be angry and afraid. Then we get the adverbial, when I think that my fellow should be in love with anybody but me. So we get this subordination going on. We get these multiple subordinate clauses coming in, the conditional and the adverbial coming in. Okay, and that only increases in frequency as we go a little bit later, actually into the 1700s, but that would be a really good example to talk about how that text uses subordination. Is that different to a later text? I guess the other thing you talk about there is what we've got here is the kind of the complexity of expression, and again that sort of desire alongside the French Latin vocabulary to sort of to prove the writer is sort of witty, that this isn't just the language of the common man, that this is actually something better. Note at the end, what to think of myself, I know not. So again, the subject comes at the end. Nowadays we say I don't know what to think of myself. The I is first, but in this one, what to think of myself. So the reflexive pronoun myself, the object, comes before the subject. Okay, so again we get that reversal in there. We've also got just, till thou findest, so again that ist ending that we're getting on the end of certain verbs is there. And then this repetition at the end, I will not die of the pip, so I will not. So again, that reposition to add emphasis, we get it with repeated negation, we get it with repeated superlatives or comparatives. That sense that if you just say it more and more, it adds emphasis to it, which we get in the text from the 1600s. So there's some of the features that you might be talking about. As we go forward, we'll look at how you might sort of compare and contrast these and draw similarities between the text. But I think the first thing is to look at a text. And I'll tell you, don't overcomplicate it. Just look for those three categories. What's different to today, or what's different between the texts? And then you start to unpick, well, how and why is it different?